Romeo and Juliet, Act 5 in 5 minutes or less. Act 5 begins with Romeo in Mantua thinking to himself about a vision he had in which he's dead, but Juliet shows up and kisses him, which magically brings him back to life. Just then, Romeo's servant, Balthazar, shows up. Romeo asks him what's new in Verona and says that if Juliet is well, everything else in the world must be going well too. Balthazar says that Juliet is in heaven, so she must be doing well enough. To which Romeo freaks out. He didn't know that Juliet was dead. Pause. Remember the plan? Friar Lawrence was going to send a letter telling Romeo that Juliet wasn't actually dead, but step 1 backfired and Juliet had to take the potion early, and Romeo still hasn't gotten the letter. He thinks Juliet is dead for real. This obviously upsets Romeo. He demands his horse. He's headed back to Verona. Just as he's about to leave, Romeo asks Balthazar if he has a letter from the friar for him. Balthazar says that he doesn't and leaves. Then Romeo rushes off, intent on seeing Juliet even if she's dead. However, before riding all the way from Mantua to Verona, Romeo makes a stop at an apothecary shop. An apothecary is basically an old-school pharmacy. Inside, he tells the worker he looks poor and says he'll pay well for a poison the apothecary isn't supposed to sell. The apothecary says no. Selling that poison results in a death sentence. Romeo insists and says that the man is too poor to refuse him. The apothecary gives in and sells Romeo the poison. Outside, Romeo talks to the poison and says he's going to use it to go to Juliet's tomb and kill himself. The next scene begins with Friar Lawrence talking to another friar named Friar John, and Friar John was supposed to take Friar Lawrence's letter to Mantua and to Romeo, but he reports that he couldn't make it because there was a plague in a city in between and he had to quarantine. Friar Lawrence realizes that Romeo has no idea that Juliet is dead, or fake dead, and thus won't be there to break her out when she awakens. He sends John for a crowbar to break Juliet out himself, and writes a new letter to Romeo. That night in the graveyard, Paris is scattering petals on Juliet's grave with his page. They hear someone coming and decide to hide. Romeo and Balthazar walk up the path. Romeo has a crowbar and says he's going to use it to open up Juliet's tomb to get her ring. He gives Balthazar a letter to give to Lord Montague, but Balthazar is suspicious, so he hides to watch Romeo. Paris recognizes Romeo as the guy who killed Tybalt and thinks he's also responsible for Juliet's death. In Paris's mind, Romeo killed Tybalt, and Tybalt's death made Juliet so sad that she died. Paris thinks Romeo has come to disrespect Tybalt or Juliet's corpses, so he jumps out to confront him. Romeo begs Paris to leave. Paris refuses, and so they fight. The page runs for help. Romeo stabs Paris, and as he dies, Paris asks to be laid to rest next to Juliet. Romeo agrees. Paris is dead. Romeo brings Paris down to the Capulet tomb. He sees Juliet and thinks that she's so beautiful that she doesn't even look dead. He says he'll be with her forever, kisses her, downs a potion, kisses her again, and dies for real. The friar enters the courtyard, and Balthazar leads him to the tomb. In the tomb, Juliet awakens and asks for an update. The friar says that Romeo and Paris are dead, and that they have to get out while they can. People are coming. Juliet refuses, and the friar leaves in a panic. Seeing the empty poison, Juliet figures out how Romeo killed himself. She tries to kiss him to get some of the poison too, but it doesn't work. She hears the people coming. Desperate, she pulls out Romeo's dagger and kills herself. Now both are dead, for real. In the courtyard, Paris's page brings the watch. They discover the friar and Balthazar near the tomb, which is suspicious. Just then, the prince and the Capulets show up. It's discovered that Paris, Juliet, and Romeo are all dead. Lord Montague shows up then and says his wife died of grief that Romeo had been banished. The prince then shows him Romeo's dead body, then demands to know the whole story. The friar tells them everything about Romeo, Juliet, their love, and their fatal end. Balthazar shows the letter Romeo gave him as proof. The prince scolds the Capulets and the Montagues for their feud. Montague and Capulet make up and shake hands, then agreed to put up gold statues of Romeo and Juliet in their memory. As the prince walks off, away from the graveyard, he ends the play with one final thought. For never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo.